What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be talking about 5 tips to make you a better route runner. Let's get started. Also, fellas, in order to be a great route runner, you have to be able to generate quickness, you have to be able to generate explosion, and you have to have speed. So if you guys want to improve your speed, your explosiveness, your quickness, check out that very first link in the description below where you can get access to a 16-week long wide receiver gym workout schedule. We map out every single gym exercise you should do, broken down into splits, day by day. Monday you do this exercise, Tuesday this, etc., with the exact sets and reps to do. So check out that very first link in the description below if you want to become a better athlete and a better wide receiver. So very first link below, let's get back to this video. All right, guys, so the first thing that I want to talk about that's going to help you become a better route runner is selling vertical. So on every single route, whether you are running a 5-yard hitch, whether you are running an 18 back to 15-yard comeback, our number one primary goal is to make that DB think that we are running deep. So what do I mean by that? I mean, when you come off of your stance, our goal is to get this DB to start backpedaling, opening up his hips, because when you get him to run full speed and open up his hips and you're able to just drop on a dime, that will create you separation. That is the first part to getting separation, and that's what route running is all about, being able to separate. So what goes into selling fade? Number one, when you guys are trying to sell fade, it's 3 specific things. Number one, you have to run with some speed. You cannot be that guy that takes off the line, then right before you're about to get to that break, you start to slow yourself down. We have to be that guy that is running full speed all the way to the break point, okay? Now, second thing that you got to focus on is your stride length. This is, again, ties into speed as well, but if you come off that ball, you run full speed, you're coming, then right before the break, you start to shorten up the stride, then break. Now, why would a wide receiver ever do that? They do that to prepare for the break, right? And we're going to talk about some things throughout the rest of this video that will help you make that break on a dime, because that's another key to running great routes. But you cannot give the route away. We cannot give something we call an indicator. So a change in speed, a change in stride, and last but not least, a change in pad level. If I'm running up and a DB's in man coverage, let's say he's right on my hip, he's an off man, where are his eyes supposed to be? He's supposed to be watching my hips. So if I'm running this route and then I start to raise up to go down, to cut off of one foot, and I raise, that's an indicator, because when you raise your chest, you raise your hips. So we have to make sure, first key to running great routes, you have to be able to sell vertical by doing those 3 things. Run full speed, keep your stride, and make sure we don't give the route away by raising up my pad level. All right, guys, so the second key to being able to run great routes is your stance off the ball to be able to generate explosion. Because when you guys come off that line, again, we have to be a vertical threat downfield on every single snap. I'm trying to make that DB think I'm running a fade when it's a 5-yard hitch or a 15-yard comeback. So a lot of that starts with your stance and being able to generate explosion out of your stance. So if you guys get into your stance and you're here, there's 2 key things that you want to try to avoid. Number one is the one thing that I hate, when wide receivers cave their toe inward. Now, there's a lot of bad information out there that people will say is, oh, you want to almost point your toe towards the sideline because that will help you with balance and stability. Yes, it will, but look where your hips go when you cave your toe. Your hips are off to the right. You're not going to be able to have that smooth path and explode straight up off this ball. So it's going to make you slower off the ball. So make sure when you guys get into your stance, it is not, again, it doesn't need to be like straight up and straight forward, because I feel like sometimes you can lack balance like that. Maybe a slight turn to the inside, but do not be that guy that almost fully turns their toe because they're comfortable in this stance. We never want to be there. We want to try to keep that toe as straight as possible, maybe a slight turn to the inside. Now, number 2, we don't want to be super wide with my stance, because that is going to create a false step. False step is one of those things that so many wide receivers have, and they don't even know that they have it. They can't even feel it because it's such a bad habit that's been built up over time. So when you guys get into your stance, we don't want to be super wide, right? Because if you're super wide, one of 2 things is going to happen. You're not going to have enough weight onto your front foot. So what you'll do is you'll take just a step back and then explode, which makes us slow. Or you might have weight on your front foot, but you're going to take a step with your back foot, then explode off. We want to eliminate both of those false steps. So a good gauge for your base is you want to try to keep a 90-degree angle with the front leg and the back leg. So you're in your stance here, it's like 90 degree. Feet should stay inside your frame, weight on the front foot, so we can just explode off of that front foot, snap my back knee up, and get off the ball with some speed. So make sure, fellas, your stance is a huge key that not enough people talk about when running great routes. Don't have that toe caved in, and let's make sure we are not too wide. All right, guys, so the next tip I want to talk about to be a great route runner is having a plan off the line of scrimmage based on your pre-snap read, okay? So now, what is a pre-snap read? I think of it like a pre-snap process. This is the same way I would teach a quarterback to read a defense, but it's a little bit simpler for a wide receiver. So when a wide receiver comes up to the line, you want to be able to identify 3 specific things that a DB does, and that tells you how to run your specific route, right? So number 1, you want to be able to identify the leverage of the DB, right? So what does leverage mean? Leverage means that if he's lined up shaded to the inside of you, head up, or is he shaded to the outside? So there are 3 specific leverages that we're looking for. Number 2, you want to look for how close or how far he is off the ball. So obviously it's going to change your release if that DB is like right up on the line of scrimmage, right in your face, inside shade, right? That's going to change up your release. But what if he's 2 to 3 yards away? That's going to change up your release because you'll probably have to attack him a little bit more. So it changes up the way you would run the route and the release that you choose based on those 2 things. And then last but not least, is it man or is it zone? So how you can tell if it's man or if it's zone is if this DB has his eyes on you or if his eyes are to the inside. If his eyes are to the inside and he's got his like back to the sideline, if you're on the outside, obviously, that is going to dictate that it's zone. If he's squared up and he's facing you and his eyes are on you, that tells you that it's man. So deciding with that pre-snap process is how you go about choosing your route. So let's pick a route. Let's say we're choosing like a 12-yard dig, for example. Let's say I come off the line, quarterback's over here to the left, I'm on the right side. Let's say I come up, DB's inside shade, right up in press on my face, and I have to run a dig. So I don't want to be that guy that forces the inside release, because when a DB's inside shade, he's trying to take away the inside. So what I would want to do is I wouldn't want to just take off and run either, because his goal being inside shade, take away the inside, force me to his help, which is the sideline, which is another defender on the field. If I run out of bounds, I'm not doing anybody any good. So what you would want to do, you want to try to hold him inside and take what he gives you to the outside. So you'd give a quick move, because remember, he's right up in press. I take the outside release, and my goal is to stack him, or if that DB is right on my hip, I could drop my hip, swat under, and throw by. But all of that, I planned all of that. You know, and again, there's a lot of pre-work that you have to do as a receiver in terms of understanding what you'd like to do off the line. Yeah, I gave that jab. That doesn't mean that's the only thing that you could use. You could use like a little slide move where you just take off and go. You use a crossover. There's not one way to do it. It's just conceptually that's what you would do. And again, you have to find what you're comfortable with. You have to go over it over and over again in your head. So when you get to a field situation, that whole process I mapped out for you is quick. Now let's use another example. Let's say we come up, we got a DB, he's inside shade. Same responsibility, regardless of how close or how far he is. But let's say he's 2 to 3 yards off. Now, would I just give a quick jab and go? No, I would close the space with him. If I just gave a quick jab and then tried to run around him, he could cut off the angle and pretty much squeeze me to that sideline. So we have to close space and get into his cushion. When he's right up in press, he's already done that for us, but he's 2 to 3 yards off, I close space and then I go. But all of this, fellas, is up here. You could know all the releases, all the moves at the top of the route, everything to be a great wide receiver on paper. But if you don't know how to actually execute it and when to execute it, it's all for naught. So make sure, fellas, to be a great route runner, you need to have a plan off the line. All right, guys, so the next key to being able to be a great route runner is having violent hips at the top of the break when it is a comeback, curl, dig, hitch route, anything where you have to drop your hips to break down, okay? So now, what do I mean by violent hips? So remember the very first thing that we talked about in this video? What do we have to make this DB think I'm doing? I have to make him think I am selling fade and I am running a fade. So when I'm running a fade, it comes down to you have to run fast, right? I got to be running full speed, I got to be running full stride, good pad level, and then I have to be able to break on a dime. The only way that you're able to break on a dime while running full speed is by having violent hips. So what exactly do I mean by that? Because I think everybody knows, like, let's say I'm running a comeback, I'm on the right side of the field, ball is to the left, I got to break this way. I think everybody knows that when you get to the break, you got to drop your hips to be able to make a sharp cut, right? That's a given. You don't want to try to make the break up tall because you're not going to be able to change direction like that. But especially when you have some speed. If you got some speed into the break and let's say it's man-to-man, DB's right on my hip, I'm going, and then I have a slow drop of my hips, I'm going to drift like crazy on this route. To be able to make that sharp cut, you got to be violent with your hips. So that is what it takes, and that's the reason why. So what do I mean by that? When you guys drop, the position that we want to try to get to make a sharp cut is you guys want to try to drop your butt down to like a slightly below parallel position, and your chin wants to go to your knee. Now again, we can get to this position, we could get there slowly, but that gives the DB more time to react, and I'm definitely going to be drifting on this break. To make that sharp cut on a dime, we got to be violent. So by violent, I mean you pretend Think about it like this. You got a string attached to your chin, somebody is pulling the string down. So you get up to that break point, somebody takes that string and pulls it, and you get to that low position that we know we have to get to quickly and aggressively, because that is what will slow me down to make that break. So if you guys want to be a great route runner, you guys want to run unguardable routes, you have to be violent with your hips in those situations that call for you to drop on a dime. All right, guys, so the next thing I want to talk about, to be a great route runner, you need to have sudden feet. So what do I mean by sudden feet? Or like violent feet, if you will, very similar to the violent hips that we just talked about. Sudden feet is when you guys cut on like a corner, a post, off the line, you're making a move, you're doing like a double move at the top of the break, whatever the situation might be. Having violent feet is another way to have yourself slow down. Because at the end of the day, fellas, route running is all about being able to sell the route, being able to cut on a dime, but also create energy with your cut so we can accelerate and widen from the DB. We talked about in the very beginning of this video. It's all about separating. Route running comes down to separating, and you separate by creating energy at the break so you can explode out. So being sudden is how you do that. Because again, what are we trying to sell on the route? We are trying to make sure that we are selling fade. I got to be running hard, full stride, good pad level, everything that gets that DB to bail. So when I cut on a dime, it's harder for him to react. So when I do cut on a dime though, I don't want to cut and be super slow out of the break, giving the DB time to recover. So you have to be sudden. So for example, let's say I'm running a post route, right? I'm running a post, ball's over here, I'm coming up to the break point. I don't want to be running with all this speed and then cut softly. Because if I run up and then I cut softly, I drift, right? I want to shoot my foot into the grass. I want to try to hear those cleats hit the turf, hit the grass, whatever it is. Now, when I make that break, I want it to be a hard cut, because that hard cut is going to slow me down. But when you step hard, combine that with speed of selling fade, that's an energy source. That creates power. And when you push off of here, that creates acceleration. Energy will create acceleration. How I think of it is like when you're running a 40-yard dash. When you run a 40-yard dash, you don't get into your stance and then stand straight up and try to accelerate. You generate power for 5 yards. They call it a drive phase. Look up any video on the 40-yard dash. They will talk about it. That's what your cut is. That's when you drop your hips. That's when you cut off of a single cut. It's a drive phase. You're trying to create energy to accelerate. Now, people are hesitant with this because they're worried, well, coach, if I run a route and you try to cut off of 1 foot and I step really hard, couldn't I hurt myself? If you have improper foot strike. So if I'm running a post route and I'm going up to the break, and let's say I try to step super hard, but I step on my heel first, yeah, that's gonna cause my leg to extend and I might hurt myself because I got some speed, but wrong form. But if I make that cut and I'm running full speed and I try to stay on the ball middle arch of my foot and I'm shooting my foot in the grass here, trying to use that grass as a power source, that's gonna be totally fine because I have the right foot strike. It's no different than, like, think about this, like you're on a box, like one of those boxes you jump onto like for explosive training. You fall off the box and you land. Imagine landing on your heels. That would hurt pretty bad, right? But if you land on the ball of your foot, you kind of land a little bit softer. It doesn't hurt as bad. It doesn't put pressure on your knees, your heels, your lower back. Same thing when making a cut. You have to have the right foot strike when you're trying to make that sudden, explosive cut to be a great route runner. All right, guys, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. We always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like a 4-month-long wide receiver gym workout schedule that you can follow with the exact sets and reps all mapped out for you, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on that. I'll see you guys next time.